like I said, guys, Sam is one of the biggest guys in procurement from Mars, Europe. He's going to bring us a little bit more about the process of transforming digitally procurement in Mars. He was leading this initiative a while ago, and he's here to share that with our great audience. So as we had with Melissa, you guys can use our app to ask Sam questions. He will talk, and then we will open for questions, and I'll have the mic for people who wants to do it live. So Sam, the stage is yours, man. Have it.
Wonderful, and thank you ever so much for taking the time to listen to me. It's lovely to see the audience, a nice big crowd as well. Yeah, so what I'll do, I'll actually just go straight in and share my deck. Give me a second to work out how to do that. Okay. And bear with me, there is a minor echo in my ear, so yeah, it's nothing worse than hearing my own voice. I do feel a little bit sorry for all of you as well. Yeah, I have 3 questions that I'm going to take you through for the next, let's say 20, 30 minutes. And then we've got plenty of time then for you to ask me some questions and have a bit of a discussion. The first thing I want to talk about is why we put so much emphasis on digital to transform our organization. And then I'm going to talk about how Mars has gone about it, and then round up with some of the lessons we learned along the way. Now, before I do it, I'll just do 2 things. I'll introduce myself, and I'll introduce Mars as well. So, yeah, I've been with Mars now nearly 5 years. I joined Mars with the best job title in the world. It was called, I think it was the Senior Director Commercial Digitalization. So it was a wonderful job title, and basically my opportunity was to help shape what the future of the procurement organization might look like, and then crucially how digital was going to enable all of that. That role grew quite quickly, and then as you'll see as I talk through some of the lessons learned, that role took on not just digital transformation, but also the processes and the people and the capabilities that need to go along to activate all that potential. And then more recently, so in the last 6 months, I've taken on a new role. I head up the European procurement team. Before Mars, I spent 5 years at GSK having a more of a P2P systems and process deployment role, but towards the end became a little bit more digital, where we're embedding new teams like our analytics organization. And then before that, I worked in a bank for 5 years at Barclays. So I've had roughly 10 years of buying and then more like 7 years of transforming procurement organizations. Now, Mars itself, in case you don't know, organization, it's a family-owned business which has its own unique parts to it. We're 140,000 associates globally, founded in 1911, so it have a long heritage, and we're operating in a number of countries, Brazil being where actually we have our shared services. We also have a factory in one of our most celebrated markets. One thing you probably don't know about Mars is actually our pet side of our business is actually bigger than our confectionery business. So lots of people tend to associate us with some of those brands at the bottom, like Snickers, M&Ms, and Dove, and so on. But actually, a large part of our business is actually pet care. And then we have actually a large number of veterinary hospitals, 2,500, as that calls out there. So large global organization, hugely complex, really interesting business segments that we're operating, but all grounded on that, the fact that we're family owned and therefore have a set of principles we live by, our 5 principles, which mean that we drive mutual benefit for all and grow the societies that we're operating. So for me, it's a real privilege to work for this type of organization. In terms of procurement, there's about 1,200 associates working in our procurement organization, buying everything from raw materials to packaging through to our indirects like logistics and our services, IT and so on. So for me, being the only digitalization director, it's a massive opportunity to come in and say, okay, how can I empower this 1,200 associate strong organization buying all these materials, all these indirects categories across the world? So let's start with that first question. Why are we putting so much focus on digital? So when I joined Mars, I came up with this phrase, which I thought worked pretty well, actually, to explain why this is so important. And that's because basically digital helps us to automate the simple tasks, so to make the day-to-day far more efficient. So that actually maybe we can automate it completely so we don't have to have any human being intervention in there. Or actually, if it is a human intervention, it's actually empowering our teams to do it much more simply. And then secondly, to take on the more complex activities. Things like using drone technology to understand the size of our crop yields in our cocoa plantations. Things like risk management, commodity price risk management, and so forth. And for me, what I saw 5 years ago starting this role is a lot of work going into basically building core systems and automating the simple tasks, and not really doing enough to really be the bleeding edge technology. In fact, what I was trying to say 5 years ago is we have to do both. We have to automate our day-to-day and make our jobs much better, but at the same time, we need to invest in that bleeding edge technology that will bring competitive advantage. That's why we were doing it. And I think this chart that I used, this was way back 5 years ago, when I used this to explain why it was so important for us. To say, look, guys, we want to drive a lot more value, and we want to be operating in areas where it's hugely complex, where actually human beings on their own cannot operate there without some technology. But at the same time, those tasks that are, like just getting data, running basic reports, managing our master data and so forth, we need to make that straightforward. And so we need to do both. We need a strategy that maybe has 80% focus at the bottom left, so that we can release maybe 20% of the potential at the top. And over time, we've moved more towards the right-hand side. So that was basically our overall strategy. What I'll give is just give you 2 examples of what I mean by that. So let's take the first one. Let's take how do we automate a simple process? Now, this is one I'm immensely proud of, because it's one that procurement organization actually solved maybe 20 years ago. The art of getting a contract template, storing it, and just managing it ongoing. However, I would argue in most procurement organizations, they would say this process doesn't work very well. And that's because we've probably gone far too sophisticated in our approval processes, far too sophisticated in how we want to negotiate and author our contracts, and far too sophisticated in managing contract obligations. The basic fact I've experienced is that it's the act of getting a great simple contract template, negotiating it, getting it approved and stored, and then executed well, is all we really wanted from this process. And so we had a legacy system that we then decommissioned and replaced with a simple, user-friendly, but also well-controlled process. Now, this wasn't easy. We had to redesign our processes. We had to actually get rid of over 200 contract templates. And then we had to be really robust across all of our business segments about what is the minimum process we need to execute our contract to meet our policies. That's where we invested the time. And then we built a tool on top that looks a little bit like this. I don't want to click through and show it, but really simple. You want to start your contract, understand your contracts, or just have an overall dashboard. And then the data that the user fills in is really straightforward. And lastly, the approvals, depending on the value and the risk of the contracts, are executed behind the scenes. As I said, I'm putting this out there because I know it's not bleeding edge technology, but I'm immensely proud because actually we recognize the technologies off the shelf out there were the wrong ones. They weren't going to meet our need. What we needed was our process to be executed well with a user-friendly system. So that was the bottom left of the chart I showed you before. How do we automate our simple tasks and make our days and our lives much more straightforward for our associates? Essentially, so we can release them to do more value-add activities, like this example. So this is a solution that we call Predictive Supplier Insights. It's a tool that connects to over 150,000 data sources. And we use your mainstream solutions like Everstream, but we also connect to many, many other data sources so that we can get very specific category insights in what's going on around the world. We partnered with an organization that was extremely sophisticated, who was able to help us make sense of all those data sources and rationalize them. And then we can give our category teams the ability to run a bespoke dashboard so they can actually understand, okay, for the next 90 days, what are my major suppliers where I have the biggest risks? I'm also going to say an important thing. This wasn't just external insights. There's a lot of internal data that we have. For example, the on-time and full performance data of our delivery of our suppliers. Another example would be the quality of our suppliers, where we actually see incoming goods and we look at the quality through our various random testing, and we're able to see whether we have deterioration trends that we need to pay attention to. These are things that are quite sophisticated, and we have to join them up. And if you think about it, our associates, the 1,000 plus of them today, had to pay attention to their own Google alerts, pay attention to their own food standards, safety alerts, pay attention to the internal data through multiple spreadsheets, and try and make sense of this themselves. What we've now managed to do is actually rationalize all that and automate the complexity of actually filtering it, and then help our teams focus on where the risk really is for them. And what you end up with is I'm sorry, I've taken a pretty bad screenshot, but here's an example of the type of things you get. So this is a category that's overall orange or amber, and then you've got some areas that are pretty okay, some of the natural hazards that are green, but then you have areas where that supply might be exposed. For example, in this one, they might be looking at some of if they operate in a country that has a high level of public debt, that would then be a potential flag for us. And then you have areas on the right-hand side where you have quality data. So that would be internal information about that supplier. And here again, you see some amber potential risk signals about this performance of the supplier. And what the model does is adds all of this up, come up with a score and say, look, in the next 90 days, we think this is going to be a high risk or not for you. So there you have it. I just thought I'd give you a very good understanding of why we wanted to go digital. It was to automate the simple and simplify the complex. And I've just given you 2 examples of the many things that we've been working on. So how are we, or how did we go about becoming more digital? Well, I plotted this chart last year to kind of explain there were a few phases to our journey. The first, which when I started the company, was to prove that there was even an opportunity here. And we did that by taking a target set of opportunities. Some of them were automated simple tasks. Some of them were actually taking on some really complex opportunities. And then running pilots, and in some cases scaling those pilots quickly when we proved there was opportunity and value there. So in terms of investment, it was pretty low. And the good thing about, because it was very targeted, we could get a return on investment very quickly and prove that, there's momentum here. We're now in this orange phase, you kind of see, where we say, look, let's go after procurement's pain points. And this is the phase that, again, it's pretty important to us because we proved there are opportunities, but we never really proved we can scale it and embed it in some of our core global processes. And so to do that, we've said, look, before we jump to technology solutions, let's make sure we're experience-led. Like the contract example I gave you, if we can't get the user to adopt, then there's no point in going there. And this brings me to the second point. We have to be process-driven. If the process doesn't work, the tool that you put on top of it is not going to function. Then we become technology-enabled. And then, of course, we talk about outcomes, number of contracts that we can upload more quickly, events that we've managed to intercept and take proactive actions to stop our business from ground to a halt because of some special, unique insight that we didn't have before. So that's where we really are right now in that phase 2. And I must say they are pain point focused, and I'll show you what they look like in a minute. But we are starting to look towards, this point B, to really unleash the value. And I think that's going to be an even longer game, as you see by the length of the green bar. And to do this is going to be a bit more complicated. We're going to have to work outside some of our own processes and join up more with our suppliers and join up more with some of our business partners. And again, I'll explain that to you in a moment. So, what were the 6 pain points? Now, I see you right now because I'm sharing my screen, but so I'm going to pretend I'm going to see some hands go up and down. But it'd be good to maybe do a quick survey with a group, and maybe on the mic you can tell me how many hands are coming up and down. But let's start with the very first one. Who in the audience thinks that their master data is perfect? That they can set up a vendor easily, they can get all the right banking information, they can then get it activated in systems, so you get purchase orders being raised against that master data, close the loop, get the category taxonomy set up so they can then start classifying spend. Who in the audience has got a clear, firm hand in the air saying their data is perfect? I'm not sure if Leo, because I can't see anybody. Are you able to Give me an indication if there's any hands.
Nobody.
Any hands in the audience?
Nobody.
No,
No
okay,
hands
good.
in the audience.
That's fine. Okay, good. That's okay. It was a mean question. It's one of those things. It's 20, 30 years old problem. We still can't get a vendor set up smoothly and quickly in a nice, clean way. So maybe it's true. I'll do one more and then we can go and look some more. So let's have a look let's keep on the data theme. So we've got, Mars has something like 1 million plus purchase orders. In terms of invoicing, we're probably 1.5 million invoices come through. In terms of line items, you probably on average 100 line items per invoice. We've got a wealth of spend data. In terms of the external data, so we have look at market trends on commodity forecasts, look at market trends on even just latest technology that suppliers are adopting and so on. Tons of information outside our organization. And back to inside of our own organization, but in other parts of our business, we have information around production scheduling, planning, and so on. Procurement sits at an intersection between a lot of internal data and a lot of external data, and it's its job to understand what to do with it. I'm just going to ask for another show of hands then. Does anybody in the audience feel like they A, understand the data, and then B, are getting value from all that data?
E aí, galera? Quem é que está entendendo? Okay. What kind of data, Sam? Any specifics or everything? Spend data?
I would go for a lot, right? Because I would say if anybody says they got a great spender, good on you, but that's just one part of the puzzle. The value comes when you start joining it up, when you start joining it with your planning data or your shipping data and so on. So who's out there thinking, you know what, I've got a great set of data for my organization, I can get my fingers on it, and I can start driving value from it.
So more broader data, so everything combined. Who here, guys? Quem aqui que tem o controle total de dados para fazer negócio bem bolado? Sorry, Sam. Unfortunately, no hands again. Your questions are hard. People, I think it's hard to have the broader sense of data. So it's the biggest challenge, I would say.
And I picked and I'll stop going down the list because some of them are a bit more straightforward. Some might say, you know what, my sourcing tools are fantastic. But these are the 5 pain points we said we'll go after. And we've got 6 solutions behind them, but 5 pain points we said, okay, we've got 2 years of investment in this program. What are we going after? We said we're going to go after these ones. We're going to make it easy to set up our vendor data and get our data clean early on in the process so that we can structure this properly downstream. We said we're going to work out where we get value from our data. That could be in logistics, it could be in specifications, it could be in planning, it could be in quality. Right, we're going to be very clear where we're going to get value from our data, and we're going to start analyzing problems and start driving value from that data. And you can see the others, the proactive risk management. I talked about the solution that does that, taking external and internal data to solve it. And also on our supply performance, be really robust on what core performance metrics do we have across any supplier that works with Mars, and put that into dashboards so we can have more partnerships with our suppliers and their performance. And then the last one, look, the tool we had before wasn't working for us, so really tackle the process and then get the right tool for the job for when it comes to sourcing and contracting. And so I'll say one lesson, what we learned through this was be really laser focused on the pain points you're going after. We had to fund them well, but then we had to really go up and put a process owner behind them to go and affect them. And now we're seeing the green shoots of these tools coming through. And I showed you a couple of those examples earlier on. Okay then, so what lessons are we learning? Now, there's this quote that second quote, by the way, of the deck. One was automate the simple, simplify the complex. The other one I came up with early on the program was we've got to think about the fact that the world's becoming digital, but it doesn't matter. That's the exciting part of it. We, therefore, just need to be more human. Now, there was a question that somebody asked, it was a conference I went to maybe 8 years ago. Someone said, look, in the world that's becoming more digital, I'm worried about my jobs. Actually, I'm worried about my children's jobs. what should I teach my children? And it was a futurologist who was doing the presentation. He said, teach them team sports. Get them to learn an instrument. Get them to get excited about the arts, because that's all the things that technology cannot do and should never do. And if you think about that in a procurement context, we should embrace the fact that we have automated purchase orders and invoices. We should embrace the fact that technology can get pricing and analyze millions of logistics routes better than we ever can. We should embrace that technology can then boost us so that we can focus on what we do best, which is working with our business stakeholders, who are human beings, and working with our suppliers, who are human beings, and getting the area of value, right, to really come to life. So it's a bold statement, but it's something I think we should just take away and think, look, guys, we're not here to get fascinated by the tool. We're here so the tool can actually help us elevate our superpowers. So this is one of the first projects I worked on Mars, where we deployed a tool to capture our savings. We were, at the time, had a $1 billion program where we're looking at how we can really get the best value from a range of suppliers. And we said, well, we need a technology to capture the value. At the time we had a tool, we also had lots of PowerPoints and spreadsheets. But the point I'm trying to drill home on this slide was the time that we took to design the process and configure the tool was 3 months. The time that we invested up front and understanding the opportunity, understanding all the spheres and the stakeholders that have to be involved, and then most importantly, as you can see, after the program was deployed, really embedded the behaviors. That was the time that we had to really think about. So most tech projects will focus on the 3 months, design and build and deploy. When this project we recognize, actually, this is at least a year-long program where we need to invest in change management of our culture. So, yeah, and this is a bit of an example. Again, this is maybe 3 years old photo, but this is Klaus, our CFO. When we had just deployed the tool, so maybe 6 to 8 months afterwards, we then had a thank you. So this is a video from Klaus saying thank you for the value he had delivered for this program. And what I thought was really fun is in the background, you can see that he was using the tool itself. For me, that is change. That is a senior leader in our business using technology to understand where our savings pipeline is, where we have risks, and then actually what action he can take personally. And that's what we needed to affect across the whole organization. So that was the people part of the transformation. I don't want to underestimate that. I'm hoping you didn't think I'll turn up today getting you excited about the tools and talking things like blockchain and analytics and all these things. Yes, I get very excited about that. But guys, I think you just need to get excited about those, but get even more excited about what potentially can do for the people in the organizations that you work in. And then this is the next frontier. So I mentioned earlier on there's a green bar, like where do we go after fixing these 5 pain points? Well, frankly, we're going to have to think beyond our 4 walls. Well, I really need to be a great procurement manager of, I don't know, let's say our raw materials, is I need a really solid plan from our manufacturing schedule all the way down actually through to from our customers. So what I need to do actually to be an associate for my organization is work end-to-end with my supply chain, from demand through to the supply and then to our suppliers. And that's just one example of the many things we need to work with. I can say the same thing for the quality. We need to work outside our 4 walls. We need to work with our R&D teams and our quality through standards and safety standards organization, all the way actually with our suppliers' quality teams. So right now, I think a lot of procurement technology conversations are around sourcing, contracting, spend data cleansing, master data management, which is all good. But frankly, if I look for the next 5 years, this is where procurement will really make the difference. When we start working beyond our 4 walls with our suppliers and stakeholders around the organization and be a lot more joined up end to end. And then final lesson learned. I think celebrating as we go along is really important. I mentioned earlier that, of course, we need to fix our data, we need to fix our P2P processes, our contracting process. We need to do all the things that are going to automate our lives or make it a lot more simple. And things like RPA, robotic process automation. We've got a number of robots doing a number of people's jobs. That's great. We need to keep going at that. But really, what will bring competitive advantage is when we go up to the top right hand of that chart and we start thinking about the value that comes between the business and the supply base, and thinking, you know what, where can we get that new frontier? And when someone has a great idea, indulge it, hypothesize, test it, and if it really works, scale it up fast. And we've got numerous examples where that's really taken our organization to new levels. And those, actually, when we talk about celebrating, we video, we show the organization. So, I promise I'll try to keep it fairly short so we have plenty of time for questions. So what I'll do now is I'll stop sharing so I can see some of you, and then ask if I can take some questions.
That's perfect. Thanks, and I think that was awesome. I think Sam's deserve a round of applause, guys, at starters.
Thank you.
We do have, again, our app for QR code questioning, so you guys can use our Menti QR code there and ask Sam directly questions. I also have my incredible question cube here, so cubo maravilhoso de perguntas aqui. So anybody who wants to make a question, I would just throw the cube. It's a little bit, you have to speak like very here, so people can hear, okay? But it's very fluffy, so people won't get hurt if I throw it. So I'll just start with the first one that we have live, and then I will see the app for further questions. So, Plinio, I'll just throw to you. Oh, sorry. Left hand wasn't a good idea, but yeah.
Better start training that hand. Hi, Sam. So thanks for the. Oh, sorry. Thanks for.
I said hi. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Thanks for the great presentation. It was really inspiring. I work with something similar to what you work with today. Basically, looking at the technology side here at the company I work in. And something that's always been a pain point is master data management. I guess that's a common widespread pain for everybody. And probably in Mars it's even larger because you have multiple countries, and if in Brazil it's already a nightmare, imagine combining that with other how many countries, right? So how did you tackle this, and thinking about what were your biggest challenges, and how do you kind of overcome these things to get a sanitized and clean data?
So I'm sometimes alone on my point of view on data. So I was early in my career, I worked at Carney, I was a consultant, and for the first 6 to 8 weeks of every project, you were cleaning data. And it didn't matter which company I went to, it was automotive or another FMCG, pharmaceutical, data was always a bit of a mess. And so early on in my career, I realized what you need to work out is what data you really need to be good enough to make what decisions. So for us, it's about take vendor master data. It's about getting the data in the systems as quickly and smoothly as possible, and safely as possible, and to the right level of safety. And so for me, it was more about the process, because I thought if we had a great process, that, by the way, was much faster than today's process, then actually we'll be able to get cleaner data because people put better data in. But what I will never do is in that process over-engineer it to get perfect master data. So for example, parent-childing the vendor master, we don't do that in the vendor master. Because then once you require that, it's another process step, another check thing you have to do, and it's something else to get wrong and slow down. And that, by the way, you can solve it after the fact. So we actually solve parent-childing in our spend analytics solution. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I was more obsessed on how do I bring agility to our business to get suppliers into the master data safely, but also swiftly, and then take away some of the complexity that I can deal with in other places. Vendors one. The second one was our categorization of our spend. And again, on here, we have to just be clear, what has to be categorized correctly? So in pharmaceutical industry, I worked at GSK, there are certain categories like healthcare practitioners or some of the active pharmaceutical ingredients. You had to get that right first time because it drove so many other issues downstream if you got it wrong. But many other things in that categorization, it didn't matter, so long as you had a way of spotting the issue and cleaning up properly later. So for me, the issue was less about the categorization, it was more about getting the right taxonomy. And Mars, when I joined the company, had multiple taxonomies. And it took us 12 months to get one. So at least we have one way of categorizing our spend across the entire organization, and then we stood a chance in cleaning it up afterwards. So I'm probably giving the answer that's, the wrong one, because most organizations say, no, we have perfect vendor master, and then we get a perfect purchase order, and then you don't need spend analytics. I don't think it's possible. I think you need to work out where it really matters it's correct, and then work out how you do get a good enough data to make the business decisions you need to take.
Awesome. I'm going to give one here from the app. I think you can also see it. Sam showed on the screen. Did you find the tax solutions already available, or you had to develop it in-house? How was the journey?
Yeah. So when I first started on this journey, I met, I want to say, 2 to 3 startups a month, and I really built my I think it's a classic logo chart you see nowadays of, this company can do this solution, that can do that solution, so on. And the way I concluded at the end of it is there were far more solutions than I had problems for. But there were a handful of really interesting solutions that you could quickly pilot, and if they worked well, you could scale them up. And so what I did was a comprehensive review of, okay, what are the major pain points, or in the early days, like where do we see some real value? And then do a comprehensive scan. And what I found was it's maybe 50-50, right? When you come to your core P2P system, raising a purchase order, your e-invoicing platform, your vendor master, do not build it yourself. That's the sort of thing you can buy off the shelf. What you need to be able to is adopt in a standard and straightforward way and make sure it's robust. E-sourcing, likewise, there are amazing solutions out there. Pilvars, scan markets, and so on. Take them off the shelf. Start driving value quickly with them. However, and I gave these 2 examples earlier on, where we were interested as well in contracting, it was better to build it ourselves. Because all the solutions that are available off the shelf are expensive and too sophisticated, and actually they weren't addressing the process issues that we had. And the other one around risk management, there are lots of great risk management tools, but they were only tackling one part of the big picture. So what we found was we need to buy multiple of them, and then we need to connect them together ourselves, and then build ourselves a solution that would make sense from them. So one of the liberating points in our journey was when we realized this is not just buy off the shelf, buy an adopted tool, we realized we're going to have a team that's actually quite big technology team that had specific AI expertise or specific process expertise. And in some cases, therefore, we could use that to build some custom solutions.
Great. We have a most voted one here. It's in Portuguese. I'll just translate that for you. So talking about supplier relationship management in the future, do you believe it's going to be less human with the advance of artificial intelligence and other automations? So are you the one that is hyped with everything that AI is bringing, or is not that easy?
So when I first started working in procurement, so after my consulting gig, I had a job in a bank and I was buying stuff. One of my line manager told me, look, I expect you to have a week that's composed of 2, 2, and 1. 2 days in the office, 2 days with your team, 2 days with a supplier, and then 1 day in the office doing your stuff by yourself. And I bet you if I did a survey of most procurement organizations, and therefore probably lots of people in the room today, and ask them, how often or how much of your time is spent with suppliers, and is it close to 2 days a week? I think the answer will be no. Frankly, we are not spending enough time with suppliers. And that's because we're bogged down with a lot of internal stuff we do inside of organizations. So actually, I think it will have the opposite effect. Technology will help us shortcut the conversation around, when's the contract expire, how purchase orders are issued, what's our latest planning forecast, what's the latest quality insights and so on. I think technology will short circuit all the manual work that we do to answer those sorts of things, and therefore should release us to spend that 2 days with a supplier, to risk manage some of the issues we might be facing, to innovate, right? To de-risk some of our complex specifications organization. There's a load of things we could be doing. But honestly, when I looked at my own calendar after the first 6 months in this job, I found out I'm spending only 5% of my time with suppliers. When I look at my boss, who's the board, on the European board of our business, and I say, look, I'm responsible for all the supply chain, and I'm only spending 5% of my time there, it's not acceptable. So frankly, guys, I think it will have the opposite. Technology will short-circuit all the stuff that ties up our time today, so that we can actually spend a lot more time with our suppliers, developing and embracing that relationship.
Good question about technology, but we have also people asking about people. So you talked a little bit about the financial results that you had and the value that we're bringing to the organization. Mm-hmm. But the question is, how are your stakeholders' experience and feedbacks about the transformation that you're leading, that you led? Do people love you or do people hate you, Sam? Tell us.
It's a great question. I think no matter how we shine a light on great stories and so on, it's still too small. And what I found is that the feedback comes from two camps. The first camp are the people that just expect you to be commercial, procurement, do your job, and if it's easier, then thanks. And I won't tell you, right? But so I'd say, for example, vendor setups, we've deployed a portal. The fact that we went from 30 days to 2 days to on average set up a vendor, the business I expected that. So and so there weren't lots of high fives. But it was basically, thank you, but that's exactly what I expect you to do. Same with the contracting. Of course you're going to get a contract uploaded and safely managed in the long term. That's what you do. So there's a camp of stakeholders who go, you know what, but that's what I expect. Your job is to make it as easy and as safe as possible for me to run my business with my supply base. But then you have pockets of just frankly outstanding stories. We early on when we piloted a tool that listened for risk with our supply base, we genuinely stopped a factory from being shut down. It was a gum factory where the technology identified an issue in the supply base. It was a newspaper article where it was a gum-based supplier. Goodyear said, look, we're trimming, we're pausing our factories, we'll be trimming our bonuses and so forth. It was in the local press. The tool alerted us. We contacted the supplier. By the way, the account manager didn't know it was happening. And then we put in a rushed order so that we could get a good safety stock in to manage through that rough period. At that point, the business was frankly overwhelmingly thanking us for that insight we brought. So, as I said, where we're fixing and automating our core processes, we don't tend to get a lot of thanks. But when we shine a light, and I've got many stories like the one I just said, then we get some really good recognition. And of course, by the way, the savings ones are always great. We just ran an amazing, very complex packaging tender, delivering great value for suppliers and us, where we're optimizing specs and so forth. So look, there's a lot of other things that come through. And we always try to shine a light. It was the technology that really enabled or boosted the sourcing manager running that thing.
We have a couple, 2 or 3 more. I think that would be what our time lets us do. So Sam, I will just also translate that one. It was the second most voted one here. We have a lot of issues regarding maturity when we talk about procurement organizations, at least here in LATAM. That's a big challenge. Mm-hmm. So from what you say, Mars seemed like at least in comparison, very mature when we talk about structure, processes, or even mindset. So if you were in a company that's not that mature or that didn't have a forward-moving agenda, where would you start to get some quick wins, maybe to try to convince everybody that this works and should be done?
It actually depends on the agenda of the organization. So, if I go back to my early days in banking, it was risk management, and particularly during the time I was working there. So, any technology conversation there was about, okay, you know what? There's a part of the value that comes from the procurement organization, and technology needs to be the thing we need to solve this. So, in the case of early days at Mars, I mentioned our savings program for our global board. That was immensely important. So we said, we need to invest in our spend data, so we actually know exactly where our baseline is, and we need to invest in tracking our savings right down to our P&Ls, and that's exactly what we did. So I guess and by the way, of course, the last few years, risk is huge. Our supply chain resilience is massive. So of course, that is the reason why our direct materials organization needs to focus on bolstering our supply chain. So I'd say how you do it is don't worry about the maturity. It's really it's an excuse not to move, and I think you should avoid that. I'd focus more on what is the business issue today at hand, and then what can procurement do to solve that. And then if it requires bleeding edge technology, go learn about it and go make it happen. I would say, by the way, don't peddle the whole we do lots of e-sourcing and lots of auctions and we need to fix our contracts. I think that's what procurement expects you to do. so yeah, find that business reason why the conversation needs to change. Yeah.
Great. So if you could maybe, what's on your mind? You would say are the biggest procurement challenges that you have in Mars for the next years to come?
I think the biggest challenge is the one I mentioned towards the back of the presentation, which is working outside our four walls. Let's just take a procurement transaction. You have a purchase order, you have an invoice, you have a goods receipt, but attached to that transaction, you have so many things. You have the specification of the item you're buying, which is managed by one group. You have the forecast, which is managed by another group. You have on the incoming inspections, you have all the quality data from your factories. You have your goods receipting process, again, at your factory. And then you have a bunch of stuff that's actually at your supplier. The real opportunity, and it's going to be a tough one, is for us to work out what's the next end-to-end process where we have a massive opportunity to de-risk our business, drive sustainability, or drive more value for our business. And ideally, how do we get a 3-in-1 with all those things? So that's exactly what Mars is doing right now. So we have had technology and being invested in all of our functions. And in the next, I'd say 12 months, a lot of work needs to go into the end-to-end business process. How do we run a business end-to-end more effectively, leveraging technology?
Great, sounds awesome. And I have one last question from the audience here, so we can keep on track with time. So people want to know, Sam, what would be the books or articles or content that you're reading, or would you suggest that would maybe open the mind or be helpful for people to understand better the journey that you went through, or to give more insights, if you could recommend something? Okay.
I'll just go into my Audible account. I tend to sit in Audible when I'm sitting in traffic. It's been really cool. Give me a second, I'll go through my library. So there's one I'm reading right now. It's called The Power of Moments by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. The reason I'm looking at that is about how you can make something memorable. Like today, if I'd done a presentation and I'd done something completely surprising, I don't know, I was wearing an outfit or something, something that really stick. And I think for me, that's an important lesson for us to learn here when we're going on our digitalization journey. How can we make the staker go, holy cow, I just avoided a massive risk. Holy cow, I just found a massive value. And it was procurement and the technology they were using that helped us do that. I need to give them more money to go invest and expand. I think that Power of Moments is an important book. Let me have another look here. I have my children's books on here as well, so you don't want to know about some of this. Not going to be helpful.
Is it? You can show the cover, or are you seeing just the title names there? The Power of Moment was the first one, yeah?
Yeah, the first one. You can see that one.
The Power of Moments, yeah.
That's a great one. That's a great one. Let me find another one. This one, okay. This one's called The Chaos Machine.
The Chaos Machine. Yeah, it's kind of folded, yeah.
So this one is just fascinating, understanding about big data and how it's really impacting the world, and how, in fact, it creates chaos when there's too much data and you can influence it a little bit. So this is more about the social media movement. I thought that was really important. This one, guys, I think is fascinating. It's called The Power of Neurodiversity, and maybe we'll leave it there. I'm trying to get the screen up. It's not really working. Come on. Why is it not working? So it's gone a bit slow, yeah. But there we go. I'll find it. This one, you can see. Power of Neurodiversity. And I think, and it's a personal passion of mine. I have a brother who's actually disabled, and it's something now I think, inside Mars, I'm thinking, actually, the world is not straightforward for everybody. And in fact, the world is probably engineered against many people, whether they have neurodiverse, disabilities through to physical disabilities. And I think, that book would really enlighten me about the superpowers that organizations really need to embrace. Particularly when you think about a world where we're trying to digitize things, create great master data, analyze problems in a way that needs to be creative and thorough. I think organizations are not really embracing the opportunity to bring individuals who have superpowers with that neurodiversity. So there's another one, bit of a left field suggestion for your group, but that's a great one for me.
That was great. We just had a D&I panel here, so I think a lot of people loved that suggestion. And Sam, I think we do have a lot of more questions, but I would like to respect your time. I do have a last question for you, because people want to know when you're coming to Brazil to discuss procurement and have a coffee with us here down south.
I don't have it in the diary, but I do need to come. So yes, we do actually purchase cocoa from the region. So I'm off to Ghana next week to look at the cocoa there and look at the farmers and things. I'd love to come to Brazil. So I don't have a date. Sorry, I'm dodging it. But it's definitely on my list to make sure I get and do in the next 12, 18 months.
Awesome, man. That was awesome, guys. A round of applause for Sam here. Great speech, Sam. Thanks a lot. I hope to see you again. Are you going to be in DPW this year or not?
Unfortunately not. That's a real shame. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll meet sometime.
First year, I was one of the founding keynote speakers there, and unfortunately this year I just can't make it. So it's a real shame. But those of you who are going, enjoy it. It will be really
maybe next time. Thanks, man. Thanks again. It was awesome. See you sometime soon. Bye-bye.